Who do you think this guy is? Let's look a little close at him. Look the way he's dressed. Look at his facial expressions. Look at his headdress. So where do you think he comes from? Do you think he lives in our time or long ago? Well, let's think. Let's look at his head. Well, it kind of looks like his headdress is a little Greek, and maybe his outfit is a little bit Roman, like a Roman leader or a Roman toga that they used to wear. So, and look at his face. He looks pretty dignified, doesn't he? Who could this be? Well, let me tell you a few facts about him. One fact is that when he was 25 years old, he was kidnapped by pirates. And instead of resisting the ransom, he said that they needed to ask more money for him because he was worth a lot more. And he started giving them speeches and teaching them philosophies on the boat, and told them if they went through with this ransom, he would come back and get even with them, and he did. He also is known for crossing the Rubicon. So what does that mean? Well, crossing the Rubicon is a saying that you've gone too far. When you've crossed the Rubicon, you've actually declared war. And we'll talk about that in his life later too. He had a son, and they named the son Little Julius, with the Queen of Egypt, Cleopatra. He also established a 365-day calendar, and he named the month of July after himself. His whole saying that he's really known for is, I came, I saw, and I conquered. And he was a big fan of Alexander the Great and studied Alexander's life. Lastly, he was assassinated by a group of senators that 60 of them got together and decided that they needed to kill Julius Caesar because he wanted to be dictator. And it was on the Ides of March. What's the Ides of March? March 15. Later on, we'll find out William Shakespeare did a play on Julius Caesar to see how even his best friends that were involved in the Senate with him became his worst enemies. A lot of stories about him, aren't there? So let's see if we can find out a little bit about his biography. Do you know who this is? I might have already said his name or already given you a clue, but his name was Julius Caesar, and probably known as one of the greatest generals and leaders of all time. And he started the Roman leadership of the Caesars, which would go on for, hundreds of years. I should say, probably 400 years at least later. He was born in 100 BC and he died in 44 BC, yes, on the Ides of March. So he was only 56 years old when he died, which is pretty young considering. He was a brilliant child and very well disciplined. In fact, he was from a military family, so he knew the military way. And he always wanted to be a soldier or a centurion when he was very young. And later on, he wanted not only be a centurion, but a general. And later on, he wanted to be a politician on top of that, which he actually fulfilled all of those things. He admired Alexander the Great and studied him, and he just looked and was really, really curious about how Alexander became such a great military leader when he was so very young. So when Julius Caesar started his life as a general, he would write his history himself. and he'd leave out the times that he actually was defeated and only talk about his victories. He also was very vain. Vain means he was kind of into himself. He wore a purple toga around, which meant that he was royalty and probably godlike in himself. He plucked out the hairs on his face because he wanted to make sure his face looked handsome enough. Back then, that was kind of the style. He also, like I said, he wrote books and had books written by him. And he was very, very politician, like I should say, as he traveled around and shared these books with people. But not only that, he would walk with the common people, the plebeians, and find out more about them and actually dine with them sometime. And so he became famous with some of the underdogs. And he also went to a lot of the arenas where they had the gladiators. And when the people would come in to watch the gladiators fight, a lot of them fought to their death, he would cheer them on too. Which I don't think is really a good thing at all, considered at this time there was probably about over 320 gladiators that fought to their death. And that seems pretty horrible to me for people to watch that. But Julius Caesar was really into those circus. They called them the circus games. Julius Caesar served in the Senate, and then he served as a general in the wars to, like he said, to conquer the world for Rome. In 60 BC, the Senate elected him as a consul. Remember, you have 2 consuls. Well, at this time, they didn't just have 2 consuls. They would become in charge of the whole entire military and also politically in charge. But they had 3. They called these 3 the first triumvirate. And the first triumvirate, as you can see, was Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus. They didn't always get along. You can imagine 3 heads not getting along. But to find out, Pompey was actually Julius Caesar's son-in-law. Although he was older than Julius Caesar, Julius Caesar's daughter married him. So they were like all in the family. They didn't always disagree, and we'll find that out. Crassus did not get along with Pompey at all, so Julius Caesar had to kind of be the mediator between the 2 of them. Crassus was very wealthy. He was probably the most wealthy man in all of Rome. And each one took a territory, and Crassus's territory was over the Mesopotamia. Julius Caesar went up and he conquered clear up into Gaul, which is like France now, and almost, they say even that Julius Caesar had almost gone past England. In fact, they did find Roman artifacts clear up in England during this time. Julius Caesar had many victories, and like I said before, he wrote about his victories, and he always came back as a hero. The Senate at that time started to fear that he would want to be the emperor or the dictator. And they thought and watched him very closely because he was becoming such a hero. In 53 BC, Crassus died in battle in Mesopotamia. So then there was just 2 of them, Pompey, and Julius Caesar. The Senate trusted Pompey, but they didn't trust Julius Caesar. They thought surely he's going to want to take over and be the dictator. And they thought dictators can easily become tyrants and take over everything. So they were very worried about this. So they went to Pompey and they sent Pompey to Julius Caesar to tell Julius Caesar that he needed to give up his command. Well, what do you think Julius Caesar said? No way. No way was he going to give up his command. So they met. They were meeting at this river. And Pompey was waiting to bring him in. But instead of bringing him in, Julius said he was going to fight. So he took his army, Roman army, to fight against Pompey's Roman army. He crossed the Rubicon. When he crossed the Rubicon, that was the last straw. That river was between them. As he crossed over, it was saying, I declare war on you, Pompey. And Rome had a civil war going on. Roman soldiers against Roman soldiers. Not the best idea. Well, he comes in and he basically wins the war against Pompey, but Pompey retreats to Egypt. As he retreats to Egypt, the Egyptians there, what is going on? The Egyptians there have the Ptolemies, the Greek Ptolemies, remember, there was 14 Ptolemies and 7 Cleopatras. We're quite there at the end there, and Egypt has the Ptolemies ruling. The 13th Ptolemy was only like 10 years old, and Cleopatra, the 4th, was 18 years old, and they were ruling. As Ptolemy, the 10-year-old, he goes to his generals and sees, oh, good idea. We see Julius Caesar coming. Why don't we find Pompey and kill him? And that way, Julius will be very happy with us when he comes. So they did that, just that. They killed Pompey. Or he had him killed. Cleopatra, she was pretty much not in this, and she disagreed with her brother. They were ruling together, but they actually hated each other. And she, in fact, thought that her brother would someday kill her. Oh, so what happens next is quite a deal. As Julius Caesar comes in, he finds out that they have killed Pompey, his son-in-law. He's kind of upset. He never did want to kill Pompey. In fact, he wanted to somehow, overcome him, and maybe bring him safely and change his mind. Maybe that's what he thought. But he was upset with Egypt. So when he comes into Alexandria, remember we studied the big city of Alexandria, the beautiful city with the Pharos lighthouse. But as he comes in, he sees the library, and guess what? Julius Caesar goes. Remember that beautiful library with, a million different papyrus books and all of the other books. They're just, that not only that, the Septuagint and all the things that we study. He goes in and he starts the library on fire. And the library starts to burn. And he goes on thinking, I am going to just basically take over Alexandria and Egypt. Well, something happens in the midst. He gets a package, and this is not your normal package. It's basically like a big carpet rolled up. And so as he gets this package and it comes in, and his generals are all, his commanders are standing there that are with him. He rolls out the package, and it is a young 18-year-old girl. Could this be? But Cleopatra. What's going to happen next?